Realmente es en la parte de arriba de la imagen, que son 3 puntos, y es solo de hacerle clic ahí y escoger el lenguaje apropiado. Muchas gracias.
Nikita, would you like to say that in Haitian?
Yes, bonsoir, salut tout le monde. Nom c'est Nikita Lamont, c'est moi qui a fait traduction après-midi à soir. Donc, nous là pour nous traduire en créole, mais nous pour une sorte de globe. Nous pour un bar qui semble un globe. Nous regardé mort d'abord. Nous pour côté marqué mort, qui a 3 petits points, qui marqué mort, mais nous checké French. Côté pour créole là, c'est French là. C'est French là, nous mettez. Et même sur, ou après en anglais, ou mettez en anglais, mais toujours checké French là. pour Creole. Okay? All right.
Great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
A quick reminder that this event is being live streamed on YouTube and on Facebook, and also recorded by WGBH's Forum Network. And it will be available for viewing on their webpage. Now, let me tell you about the ground rules for the forum tonight. We have some great questions prepared by the Green Team, and we'll tell you a little bit more about the Green Team in a bit. We also received 30 questions from the audience. Given the limited time we have tonight, we have selected just some of them. We chose them because we felt they best represented the majority of the total of the questions we received. Afterwards, we will send the candidates the remaining questions so they can respond in writing. And we will be sharing those answers to all of you who are in attendance here tonight. Now, each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer each question. I will be keeping the time, and I will flash you a 30-second warning toward the end of your time, like this one. And I also like to remind you to be very specific and concise in your answer. Try to be very policy specific. Don't be afraid to be wonky and policy heavy. We're here to learn on your position, so we would really appreciate it if you're specific. At the end of the question segment, each of you will have 1 minute for a closing statement. This is going to be at the end of the program. Now, I would like to introduce Pat Alvarez, Assistant Director of the Southwest Boston CDC, who will tell us about the Green Team.
Thank you. We're so excited that everybody's here for the Green Team's Candidates Forum. The Green Team has been thinking a lot about the issues they're concerned about in the community, and I think they've come up with some wonderful questions for the candidates. For people who don't know the Green Team, we're a youth jobs and environmental stewardship program run by the Southwest Boston CDC for the past 12 years in collaboration with the city's Department of Youth Engagement and Employment. Every summer, the Green Team youth, guided by the city's Parks Department, do restoration of Hyde Park's conservation land. And in addition, they receive training in job readiness and life skills. They learn about the environment and the ecology of the river and of the woodlands, and they learn about climate change. So can all the Green Team members give a wave so everyone can see who you are? And the crew leaders and interns, and our fearless program coordinator, Perla. Thank you all so much for the amazing work that you do to help our community.
Oops. Thank you, Pat. Now I would like to introduce you to Saba Ijadi, the Climate Justice Coordinator for the Fairmont Indigo CDC Collaborative, who will share information about the Climate Justice Initiative.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here and so much for having me. I'm the one who's been sending you way too many emails over the past couple of days. I am not sure if we mentioned this already, but the event is being live streamed. So if you do not want your video to be available at all on those live streams, please go ahead and disable it now. The event is also being recorded, so we will be distributing that after the event to anyone who's registered. Sorry if someone already said that. Here are the links in the chat to the YouTube live stream and the Facebook live stream if you would like to share those on your social media. So the Fairmont Climate Justice Initiative is a grassroots campaign to end climate change in a just and equitable way that puts the health of our communities first. If you enjoyed this event, if you thought it was something interesting, or if there was a question that particularly interested you and you felt like doing something about it, please join our advocacy group. You can send me an email at fairmontclimate@dbedc.org. I'm going to be sharing that at the end of the meeting as well, and it's in the chat box right now. We need people just like you to be a part of this movement so that we can demand that all people in Boston have the right to a healthy environment and to clean air and to healthcare and to affordable and healthy housing. We are hosting this candidate forum because one of the ways to make that change is to vote. We all hope that this event inspires you and helps you to choose the candidate that best reflects your values. Thanks.
Thank you, Saba. All right, let's get to it. I'm going to introduce the candidates very quickly. I'll go by alphabetical order. We have Rob Consalvo, who is a former Boston City Councilor who represented District 5 for 12 years on the City Council. After serving on the Boston City Council, he became Deputy Director for the city's Boston Home Center and currently is the Senior Advisor to the Superintendent of the Boston Public Schools. Rob is a proud father of 3 Boston Public School students, Amanda, Anthony, and Austin, and lives in Hyde Park with his children and wife, Michelle. Next, we have Dukins Petit Maître. I hope I said that right, Dukins. Dukins has had and continues to play multiple roles in Boston. Recently, he became the Vice Chair of Ward 18 Democratic Committee. He has been a member of the Boston Carmen's Union Local 589 for nearly a decade. For 9 years, he was a member of the UFCW Union Local 1445. Currently, he is one of the essential workers at the MBTA's Bus Operations Department, where he has been employed for nearly 10 years. Dukins is in the legal field at the Massachusetts School of Law and has a Bachelor of Science degree in legal studies with a minor in business administration from Newbury College. Next, we have Gretchen Van Ness, who is a civil rights attorney, community organizer, Hyde Park homeowner, and the first woman ever to be on the ballot in the 14th Suffolk District. She most recently served as legal counsel in the Massachusetts State Senate, where she built strong relationships with current policy leaders. Thank you all for being here. So we're going to begin with the questions from the Green Team. And again, you each have 2 minutes to answer. And we're going to start with a question from Mina. Mina, go ahead.
Thank you, Marcela. The 2050 Roadmap Bill, an act setting next generation climate policy, was recently passed by the House and the Senate. It includes strategies that will help reverse climate change by 2050, but research shows that the effects of climate change might be irreversible in 10 years. Will you sponsor a new bill to address climate change more rapidly?
And Rob, we can begin with you in this question.
I knew I was going to do that. First of all, let me thank all of you for being here, to our hosts, our moderators, to the Green Team, and to Southwest Boston CDC, to the great work that you do in our community. You are an amazing asset to our community. You do so much for our neighborhood and for our city. And I really appreciate, and we all really appreciate the service you provide to our community and the citizens of Boston. So I would have supported and voted in favor of the bill that passed the State House, a sweeping environmental bill that most recently passed. I think it was important legislation. I know the Senate has their own version. They'll reconcile those differences, and I would support, based on seeing the recommendations that they put forward, supporting the conference committee's report on that had I been in the legislature. Look, I think that we are in a climate crisis, and I think we need to be doing everything we can to address climate change. That means on bigger public policy issues like supporting the legislation that recently was introduced at the State House. Yes, I would work with my colleagues in the legislature, if I'm fortunate enough to be elected, to support new legislation to help fill gaps where the current legislation may not have addressed or gone far enough. I think we need to do even more, but I think we need to do more to connect it to the local level. Yes, I support transition to 100% clean energy by 2030, and we need to get to carbon neutral by 2050. But we need to do more on the local level as well. And that's understanding the impacts of climate change and what it means for the 14th Suffolk District. And the next state representative is going to play a huge role in being the voice for this community in the legislature to address those issues. Yes, we have to worry about coastal flooding down in the coastal areas, but the impacts of flooding inland on our Neponset River and the Mother Brook will have huge impacts on the houses and the business owners and the areas around the Mother Brook and the Neponset River. We need to take a proactive effort around our buildings in our city. We know we have 86,000 buildings in the city, but we know 2,200 of those buildings emit at least 50% of all of the carbon emissions. And so we need to be aggressive internally, downtown and along the coast, but we also need to bring it back to the district locally and make sure that we're delivering for the 14th Suffolk District those protections that are around climate change.
Thank you, Rob. Dukens, can you go next, please?
You're muted.
All right. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Just before I start, I'd like to thank you all for being here today, for organizing this event. It's a great event. I thank you all for doing this. Again, this is a great question. Climate change is a global issue. We definitely, once we get elected, we'll work in collaboration, all state and local and leaders in the House, and to make sure we pass that to support anything that's already involved or ongoing in the House. I will support it strongly. And I think we need strong action. We need action. We definitely will work together, because climate change is not something that's going to be done and overnight. It takes it's a long process, but if we work together, we can get it done. We can fix it. But we can do it together. So I promise that I will fight on that. I will work together with all other legislators to make sure we have a strong system in place, to make sure that we will no longer remain highly polarized, while they bring a rapid solution in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Gretchen.
Thank you so much, Marcela. Thank you to the Green team. It's so fabulous to see you here. Thank you to my fellow candidates. It's great to be on the campaign trail with you. And thank you, Saba, for organizing this, this event. I would have voted for this bill, but the question was, do we need to address climate change more rapidly? And would I sponsor legislation to do that? Absolutely, yes. The 2050 is simply too late. We were able to, in the Roadmap 2050 bill, shift the goalposts a little bit closer to the current crisis, but it's still not enough. If we look next door in Rhode Island, they have a goal to get to 100% electricity from renewable sources by 2030. Even that is stretching it for us, because we know that the climate change catastrophe is crashing down on us right at this moment, and we need to respond and act and lead in a way that is commensurate with the emergency that we're facing. So I do not think that we can simply wait until 2030, 2045, 2050 to reach these goals. We need to be working right now and investing in everything, all of the systems, all of the technology, and creating the jobs so that we can make this transition in the next 5 to 10 years. That's the scope of the emergency that we're facing. So I appreciate the question very much, because this is one of the reasons that I'm in this race, is because we have to act now with great urgency. And there is movement at the State House. I worked on the Senate bill, the Next Generation bill with Senator Rausch, and have seen that we have been beginning to move in that sense of urgency, but we need more leaders at the State House to push us to do that even more. And I would support that and introduce that. Thank you.
Thank you, Gretchen. Now we're going to go to Bermina, who's going to ask her question now.
Thank you. So climate change is disproportionately worsening living conditions for moderate and low-income citizens. An act establishing a study of energy efficient options for low-income households is being considered by the legislature. This act aims to help low-income households reach net zero energy. Will you support this legislation, and how will you ensure low-income residents will get the resources they need right now to make their living conditions safe and healthy, such as free air conditioning?
Great question, Bermina. We can start with Dukens now. You can go ahead, Dukens.
Yeah. Okay. Am I all set now? Can you guys hear me? Good.
Yes, go ahead.
It is a great question. Again, Bermina, thank you for this question. Yes, we're definitely gonna, I will support it. Strongly, I will support that. And like I said, I am one of the, I was the first generation from my family who actually attended college. And I am one of the, I mean, I am a minor, one of the candidate that actually understand the minorities, what's going on in the minority sector, where we don't have enough support when it comes to clean energy. And we definitely will support any bills that's already in the House that we're working on. And we will definitely work with other state legislators to implement what's already in there. So one of the things that we want to make sure we everyone understand is that when we work together, we get things done faster. And I believe that we don't need 5 years to get things done. We need to act now. And then that's the reason why I'm in this race, to make sure we win actions. We want to make sure we work together, and we want to make sure that anything that the low income family have access to it, and to make sure there's enough opportunity for everyone. That's one of the things that I believe in. I believe in equal opportunity. I believe in equal, everyone deserves a fair shot. And I believe that it should not be a certain group of people that taking advantage of the system and the other one left behind. I feel like, you know, there's a strong need for what's going on in our system, and everyone should be part of it. Everyone should be around the table. Everyone concerned should be in the center of every table. When it comes to a discussion like this, it is an important issue, and we should take it seriously. We should not act like, yes, we're going to take it seriously because we want to get elected, and once we get in the House, it's completely something different. So we're going to act on it immediately when we get in the House.
Thank you, Dukens. Thank you. Gretchen, you can go next.
You're muted. Sorry. Thank you for this question, Bermina. This is a very important issue because it gets to the heart of one of the things that has held us back as a Commonwealth. We have a flat income tax in our Commonwealth right now, so that you and I pay the same income tax rate as the wealthiest among us. It means that we have been depriving our state and our Commonwealth of the resources that we need to invest in exactly the kind of programs and policies that you're talking about. You're absolutely right that low and moderate income households are hardest hit by climate change. And we need to have the resources and raise the resources as a Commonwealth so that we can invest in these communities to mitigate those impacts. And it really is our job right now as legislators to look at everything that's going on with economic inequities and racial inequities, and where climate change and this climate crisis is affecting our communities, and center those communities in all of our policy decisions. I support the millionaire's tax. I support closing corporate tax loopholes, increasing taxes and fees on large corporations, because this will create the resources that we need to support our communities and invest in our communities and help restore and heal the communities that have been most impacted by the failed policies of the last several decades. It's time for new thinking, and it's time to invest in each other and take care of each other. And I'm going to fight for the resources to make that happen. Thank you very much.
Great. Now, Rob.
Thank you for that great question. And I think this is an issue where Dukens and Gretchen and I agree on. The time to act is now. We can't wait any longer on the big picture issues about how we get to clean energy and zero carbon emissions, and we address climate change immediately. We have to treat it like it's the crisis that it is. I would completely support legislation to address that issue. I think it's critically important. We need to hold the state accountable to incentivize cities and towns to provide dollars and make funding available to do exactly what your question asked. I also support what Gretchen talked about, that we need new ways of thinking around revenue generation, particularly with the COVID crisis. All of this discussion and work has to be framed around the COVID crisis and what's happening to the revenues on the state and city level. You're looking at a $6 to $8 billion shortfall on the state level, a $60 to $80 million shortfall on the city level in revenue. So how we frame this discussion, how we come out of the impacts of COVID, looking through the lens of equity, and making sure equity is at the base of all of our decision making is critical. When I was on the city council, I chaired the housing committee, and we worked on these very issues, making sure that District 5 and the people of Hyde Park, Rosendale, Reeville, Mattapan had the exact resources they need in this very issue. When I left the city council and went to the Boston Home Center is the exact kind of agency that does the work you're talking about. It provides resources and dollars to help people make home repairs to their home, to make their homes energy efficient, to make their homes more sustainable, to make their homes more livable. So as a state representative, we need to be the voice of the community to hold the state accountable on new progressive revenue sources, like the millionaire's tax, which I also support, like corporate fair share. And those scarce dollars, when we do raise new revenues, need to be directed back to the people of our communities and our neighborhoods for these very programs. And we need to support organizations like the Boston Home Center that have the proven track record of dealing with community members and homeowners and helping them make the necessary home repairs to make their homes more efficient and allow them to stay in their homes in the city of Boston. So I absolutely would support that. I would be the strong and vocal voice, someone who's worked on the state and city level, to be able to bridge those gaps and to be able to build those bridges to bring those valuable resources back to this district. Part of the role as state representative is making sure your voice is heard in state government, that your issues that are important to you are heard in state government, and making sure that we're delivering resources and dollars back to the district, that this district gets its fair share to make sure that the kind of priorities that this organization cares about are delivered to the people of this district every day.
Thank you, Rob. Now we're going to go to Aaron.
All right, thank you. Scientists have proven that increasing tree canopy is critical for lessening the effects of climate change because trees provide oxygen, reduce carbon dioxide, and cool the air. How are you going to protect the tree canopy in existing conservation land? And how are you going to expand tree canopy in areas where there is land?
Thank you, Aaron. Gretchen, we can begin with you this time.
Thank you, Aaron, for the question about trees. I am passionate about trees. I have fought to save trees throughout my life. I have helped plant trees. One of my earliest memories is working with my family to restore a park in our neighborhood, to make a park actually out of an empty lot. And I remember planting the little tree and the seedlings. I've gone back all these years later and they're towering trees now. Urban canopy is absolutely critical. You can look at an aerial photograph of any city and you can pick out the parts of the neighborhoods that have been left behind, that are suffering from the climate and racial injustice because there are so few trees. I am a huge supporter of Speak for the Trees Boston, but more than that, I want to propose a tree ordinance for the entire state. We, city by city right now, Cambridge and Newton have done this. They are protecting trees on private property. So this is one thing we have to do, is stop trees from being removed on private property because they are a public good. We need trees in every neighborhood. So we need to invest in supporting the trees that are on private property, stop their removal unless they're diseased or there's a danger. And we need to set aside a fund and invest in a tree fund to continue to plant specifically in the neighborhoods that have lost tree canopy. There is no reason that anyone should be living in Boston without trees on their streets and in their neighborhoods. And this is something that's very dear to my heart and I have fought for all along. But we also, so it's a two-pronged piece of planting new trees, mature trees, investing in them, setting aside a trust fund to make sure that we continue to restore the urban tree canopy and protecting the trees and helping them stay healthy, the ones that we have right now. So I will always be a tree advocate. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gretchen. Rob, we can go to you now. Rob.
Thank you. Yeah, this is a hugely important issue, an issue that I worked on as a city councilor, then when we worked on many different zoning cases, working with our neighbors to be advocates to protect trees in our community, working on making sure that the city budget had full allocation and funding for the street tree program, helping to plant street trees on our neighborhood cities and sidewalks for our constituents when they asked. I completely agree that we need to have stronger laws around tree preservation on private property. So right now, We have state laws that actually protect street trees. And there's a whole process if you want to remove a street tree from in front of your house, working through the Boston Parks Department, but we don't have any laws around protecting clear cutting of trees on private property. We need it. I would file a statewide law on that. I would work closely with the City of Boston's Parks Department because I think it's so critically important that we need to work with our Parks Department, who is the steward of our trees. I think that we need to have a law that regulates, like in zoning, that regulates so many other aspects of developing property, that regulates the clear cutting of trees on properties. I think it needs to be based on we could have a creative system, like based on the totality and the number of trees that are on a property, and create a percentage in the zoning code of how many can be removed and not removed. We could also maybe do it based on the age of the tree, where older, more mature trees would stay on a property, and we would work with the developer on protecting those older, more mature trees and not and removing younger trees. So we need not just an ordinance, we need a statewide law with teeth in it that holds every single city and town in this Commonwealth accountable to protect trees on private property, to prevent clear cutting on private property. And I would also add one more thing. I've called for a development master plan for Hyde Park in this community in the 14th Suffolk, because we don't have a thoughtful planning process to have a blueprint for the future of development in our community. Developers are coming to this neighborhood to development because they know what we already know, that this is one of the greatest communities, if not the greatest community in the city of Boston and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And I've called for a planning study with the Boston Planning Development Agency, and it would include open space as part of that planning study, and it would include trees. I'm going to just close by saying that we only have a 27% urban tree canopy in the city of Boston. That's outrageous. That number needs to increase. We need to have it statutorily required to be increased, and we need to hit higher goals citywide, because that is an environmental justice issue that only 27% of our city has an urban tree canopy.
Thank you, Rob. Dukins?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. Thank you for the question again. I think trees are very important, extremely important in people's life, because if tree helps with oxygens, that's mean it is part of our human life. So we need trees in our communities. Not only it helps with the beauty of our communities, it's also help with lives. Like you said, it helps and protect with oxygens. One of the things that I've worked with UMass Boston in planting trees and protecting trees. I strongly support green, and there's no reason trees should remove. And it is important in our life, and we won't implement any laws and policies on how to remove or when to remove trees. Therefore, we need trees in our community. We should not be removing trees, and I will protect the trees in our community, and I will vote for it. I will strongly support it. We need trees. Without trees, there's gonna be some sort of a lapse in life, because we need the oxygen, we need the view, we need the beauty in trees that it's provided in our community. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dukins. Now we are gonna go to Anna.
Thank you, Marcela. Will you reintroduce a bill to abolish qualified immunity as your first priority for addressing police brutality and holding officers accountable for their actions?
We can start with Rob on this question. Rob?
Sure. So I appreciate you bringing up that question. And that question speaks to the larger police reform bill that's currently pending before the State House, both a Senate version and a House version, which our conferees will hopefully find compromise on. And I want to first start by saying that I support virtually many of the proposals that are in both the House and Senate version of the bill. Certainly the positions that the Black and Latino Caucus came out with as the framework of the bill, banning chokeholds and creating a system of certification and decertification, as well as duty to intervene, and many other of the important reforms that we need and that will get passed, and that will be part of the version that will go before the legislature. I do have strong concerns about eliminating qualified immunity as proposed. I think that there are huge issues that are really unresolved. It is such a complicated issue that I think that just in the time frame that these bills addressed it, the Senate bill was passed at 4 o'clock in the morning with no public debate or public testimony. One of the things that I hear from folks when I'm on the phones, I've made close to 3,000 calls, is that people want more transparency, not less transparency, more opportunity to participate in the process, not less opportunity to participate in the process. And people want their voices heard. And the issue of qualified immunity in my research, and I've studied it extensively, is so complicated that I think what the House proposed, they've proposed that they do a study on qualified immunity, and that the report back to the legislature in 2021, one of the three of us will be on that in the legislature in 2021 to see the result of that study. And then the legislature would be able to deal with it in a thoughtful process where the public can weigh in and folks can have an opportunity to testify and be a part of the process. I think transparency is a huge issue. I think more people need a seat at the table. More people need a voice to be able to voice their opinion on public policy, not less. And we need to do more things that encourage people to have a participate in the process. So I have huge concerns about what qualified immunity means for public employees. I don't think we know the impact on public employees. I think we don't know the impact on state and federal courts who oversee this. And that's a huge issue as well. I also know there's questions about what is the impact on removing qualified immunity on municipalities, who will then have to indemnify all of those folks who, if there were issues, who were found guilty and need to be paid. In almost 99% of the cases, the individual person doesn't pay for the civil liability. It's the municipality that does. So I think there are so many outstanding questions. I have huge concerns about it. And I think we need to pull it out of the bill, as the legislature said, let them study it as they said, bring it back in 2021 and let whoever, hopefully me, who's on this table, be able to address it. But I think it has far-reaching implications for our public employees, retaining public employees, recruiting public employees, and I think we need to address it in a thoughtful manner.
Thank you, Rob. Okay, now Dukan, see if you can go next.
Sure. All right. As your next state representative, I pledge to help bring a hopeful insight in our community's problem and listen to concerns closely to the public questions and concerns. This is what I will do once I get elected on September 1st. I strongly support racial equality and social justice for everyone. As a vice chair for Ward 18, we were able to vote it on a resolution that where we asked that we reduce funding of the law enforcement by 15%. I will strongly stand strong behind this. I strongly support licensing and significant police training. I will support equal protection for everyone. And we demand more training for the police officers. Don't get me wrong, there's good police officers, there's bad police officers. But what we can do, we gotta work together and see how we can implement the training system and make sure they have enough training. If a police officer, I'm gonna take this example. I've heard it's a friend of mine and sent me a video chat, and I was listening, and I wanna use the same example that person used. If a doctor has to do with life and death, and takes 10 years, 8 to 10 years to be a doctor, to become a doctor, certified doctor, and a police officer has to do with life and death, taking up to 6 up to a year. And I think it is impossible. It is unfair to the community to have that short amount of time to train police officers and put them out there to deal with us. And as a minority, I am a victim of that system. And I can speak for many of you right now. And I think there's a strong need, and that's what we've been advocating for. We need actions, and the time is now. I will support the reduction of fund from the police officers, and we will support more training, and we will make sure everyone have a fair shot, and make sure that when we do the recruitment, we make sure we get people in our community that understand the community before we even hire any police officers. Because it is okay to hire police officers that have been in the service before. It is okay to give them that priority. But at the same time, that police officers gotta be coming from our community. That police officer need to understand inside and outside of the community before you put them out there. Okay. And that's one of the reasons why we will support policing, more community policing, and make sure we have a strong community. And we cannot do this alone. We got to do it together. Okay. We're going to work with all the state legislators to make sure we implement that system in place. Thank you.
Thank you, Dukens. Gretchen?
Thank you, Anna, for the question. The answer is yes. We need to, first of all, I was the first candidate running for office in Massachusetts who endorsed the Black Latino Caucus's 10-point plan to address all of the issues of reform and police reform. And part of that plan is to address qualified immunity. I'm a civil rights attorney. I've practiced in the state and federal courts. And I can tell you that this is a court-created doctrine that is an exception to the rule that has ended up swallowing the rule entirely. No good police officer has anything to fear by revoking qualified immunity. That's the basic truth. And if we are going to live our principles that Black Lives Matter, this is where the rubber meets the road. This is a difficult issue to talk about because it's complicated. We have decades of experience watching qualified immunity expand. As a judge-made rule to basically excuse all behavior, so that we have terrible cases where a police officer has sexually assaulted someone in custody in handcuffs, and unless there's exactly that case somewhere that tells that where a court has said that that's absolutely impermissible, the court will say no. We're not going to hold the police officer liable for that kind of assault. This is not good public policy, and if we believe that Black Lives Matter, as I deeply do, it has to be reflected in public policy. And I am going to stand with and behind the Black and Latino Legislative Caucus as they continue to fight this fight. We do not send important bills to study when they have already been heard in committee. So this bill that the amendments and bills that were talked about in the police reform bill, they had public committee hearings. There's been testimony on them. You send something to study when you want it to die. That I do not want this issue to die. I want us to address it. I want us to have the courage to address it. Now is the time, now is the moment, and I will stand with the Black and Latino Caucus and amplify their voices, support them in any way I can. This is not my bill to introduce because they are fighting the fight and leading it, and I will co-sponsor the bills that they introduce to address this issue and all of the issues that we must address to make sure that Black Lives Matter. Great, thank you, Gretchen.
And now we're going to go to Mina, and I'd like to remind again the candidates to please stick to the 2-minute limit. I would appreciate it because we have a lot of other questions to go through. I get that this is a passionate subject, but please try to stick to the 2-minute limit. So Mina, why don't you go ahead and ask the last question from the Green Team?
Thank you, Marcela. In order to decrease avoidable police intervention and imprisonment, will you advocate for funding to expand preventative services for mental health care, substance abuse treatment, homelessness assistance, and family support services?
Thank you, Mina. Dukens, why don't you go first this time?
Yes, I will definitely support it. That one of the things that we did in Ward 18 together, we worked together, we came up with a resolution where we wanted to see what we can do to help the community, the minority community. As a minority person, I understand every time I see each and every one of you, I see myself, I see the pain you're going through, I see the problem and you're going through, and I am a victim of it, just like you've been through, or your friend, your family, and been through it. One of the things that we voted on is to see if we can have reduce the fund and we allocate that money to the community, to the minority community, in terms of, like you said, to the health crisis issues, the mental health issues, and then send it to the educations, and then training, as well as we send it to the we want more that money to go to the minority community, because we've been suffering a lot, we've been through a lot, and then I think the time is now to make sure that money goes to our community, and then that way we can benefit of it. So that's what I will vote for. I will support it, and I will make sure that money is reallocated to the community of minorities. And because if we don't have a strong system, we're not gonna go anywhere. So we must work together, and then to make sure that money go to where it belongs, where it should go. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dukens. Gretchen, you can go next.
Thank you. Yes, Mina, this is exactly what we need to be doing. Many of my supporters and many of my neighbors are police officers, and we have often had conversations about how impossible their job is right now and the kind of supports that they need to be able to do their jobs better. And I also talked with so many of my neighbors and our neighbors across all of the 14th Suffolk about how we want to live in community together and support each other. So when I talked about taxation very early in this forum, again, this is key to how we invest in each other and in our communities and take care of problems before they become something that only calling the police is going to address. So I absolutely believe that we need to invest in mental health services, substance abuse services, all of the kinds of care that individuals and families need in crisis. And we need to do this by expanding the services that are available at public schools. We need wraparound programs for their mental health services, help nurses, trauma services, and supports of every kind in our public schools for the whole child and that child's family. We need to do this out in the community so that if the police are called and there's a crisis that doesn't require a police officer, but does require a mental health expert, there's a place to take a person who needs mental health support and opioid care and all of those things. So our police, because as the social safety net has been, we've not invested in it as it has been frayed and chopped back again and again and again. All of these different parts of taking care of each other or responding to crisis keeps on falling on our police officers. That's not fair. And we need to invest in strong institutions and programs so that they can focus on doing their jobs. And we have the experts in all of the other kinds of supports for our families and our friends and our neighbors who need those kinds of supports. So again, help me get this millionaire's tax in place, and we can invest in our communities in a different way. Thank you.
Thank you, Gretchen. Rob?
Oh, sorry. Can you read the question to me again, please?
Yeah, just,
Want me to do it, Mina?
no, I got it.
Awesome.
In order to decrease avoidable police intervention and imprisonment, will you advocate for funding to expand preventative services for mental health care, substance abuse treatment, homelessness assistance, and family support services?
Thank you so much. I just want to make sure I heard it correctly. The answer is absolutely yes. And I'm the candidate in this race who has a proven record to have already done that. As a Boston City Councilor, I did it as the chair of the Ways and Means Committee, helping to shepherd through an over $1 billion city budget, working with my colleagues that focused on those very areas. At the Boston Home Center, leading the city's housing and homeownership efforts, I led the fight for more resources for first-time home buyers, particularly first-time home buyers of color, for foreclosure prevention intervention so we could keep families in their homes, and for home repair funding so that we could help our seniors who are in many cases cash poor but house rich stay in their homes in our community. At the Boston Public Schools, working with Superintendent Brenda Cassellius, I helped the superintendent advocate for a $100 million increase in the school department budget. So we could target the most needy schools, the 30 most underperforming schools, to make sure that we did the very things that this question talks about. That money is going towards nurses, a full-time nurse in every school, mental health counselors in our school, social emotional supports in our school. It's to go towards a model called hub schools, where we bring in all of the community-based resources into the schools to help address the social emotional needs of kids. I couldn't agree more that we need to be investing more in those kind of social services components. We need to be, again, I said it earlier as well, generating progressive new tax revenue, supporting a millionaire's tax, supporting corporate fair share, and being open to creative and other ideas. As a legislator, part of our job is to listen. And I'm going to have an open door and a transparent policy where people can come in and share their thoughts and ideas with me about how they think we should be generating revenue and how we should be spending that money. Each of you on this call will have a seat at the table with State Representative Rob Consalvo, because I want to hear your voice. I value your voice. The answer is absolutely yes. I also want to just bring up the opioid crisis, and substance abuse is a key issue that we need to be redirecting resources on as well, that affects so many people in our community, affects so many of our families, and it's one of the #1 issues I want to attack. So the answer is yes. I've done it and I look forward to doing it again.
Thank you so much. So that concludes the portion of the forum for the questions from the Green Team. And now we're going to go to questions that we got from the audience. And this is a question from Janine. I'm just going to mention the first name of the person who submitted the question. And this is a question from Janine. Hyde Park has become a more diverse community in the past several years. What will you do to continue to reach out and support this diversity in Hyde Park? And Gretchen, you can go first this time.
Thank you to Janine for this question. One of the reasons I love living here is because of the diversity of our community. I most recently was honored to be part of the Fresh Slate Ward 18 committee, so a Democratic committee. And this is a committee that was elected back in March to be the new Democratic committee representing Ward 18 that includes Hyde Park, some of Rosendale, and a chunk of Mattapan. And this is the most diverse, most representative, most engaged ward committee that we've ever had in this community. And a group of people came together over the years and said, we want a ward committee that represents us, that reflects this community. And I was very honored to be invited to be part of that. And I reached out to every single neighborhood in Hyde Park, in Rosendale, Mattapan, and invited folks to join us. And we elected that historically diverse and inclusive committee. So that's the most recent piece of working with our diverse community that I have been part of. We also need to continue that, and in my campaign, we have a leadership committee that includes everyone from the members of the Latinx community to the Nigerian community, the Haitian community, persons with disabilities, veterans, small business owners. So one of our strengths, it's a cliche, but it's true about Hyde Park, one of our strengths is our diversity. And my responsibility as state representative is to protect this community and this diversity in every way possible. And that means that we have to protect the affordability of housing and make sure that young people can afford to live here, that young families can afford to stay here and raise their kids here. So I have a lot of, in my campaign policies about protecting housing costs. And we need to have representation that includes everyone in this community. So you can take a look at the Fresh Slate Ward 18 and see what I've done most recently. And I will continue to do that as your state representative. And meeting all of you here today, including young people, is in part of our conversations, and all of our decision making is also a big part of diversity. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Gretchen. Rob, we can go to you next, please.
Thank you so much. That's just a great question, because I love this community so much. The diversity of this community is its strength. I've lived in this community my entire life, and I'm so proud of this community and all the people who've contributed so much to make this the greatest community in the city of Boston. Again, I have a proven record of working with all people, regardless. As a Boston City Councilor, I represented a district that was a supermajority district of color, and I was proud to be reelected 6 times in that district. So I understand how important it is to make sure that all people have a voice in government. Part of my slogan is that I want government to work for all of the people, not just some of the people. So the question is, what would you do as a state representative to do that? First of all, I'll be a full-time state representative who's available and transparent, who makes sure that everyone has a seat at the table. I'm the only candidate in this race who said they'd open a district office right in Cleary Square in our business district, so that I could bring government closer to the people, staffing it with a full-time staff person at least 1 day a week, and have an opportunity to schedule appointments there. So folks don't have to come all the way into the State House to talk to me. They can meet me right here in the neighborhood. I did that as a city councilor, and it was an extremely effective way to communicate with voters and make sure you're representing your community. I'll continue to host neighborhood office hours, as I did as a city councilor, so that on weekends, so that people during their time can come see me to talk about the issues that are important to them. I'll host town halls. I will host individual meetings, and I will communicate via social media, as well as through other mediums like traditional newsletters and e-newsletters. The most important piece is, the 3,000 voters I've called so far, is that folks want to know that an elected official is there for them. No matter what the issue is, They want to make sure that the elected official is there to help them solve their problems. I believe that government is about helping people. I believe it's about making a difference in the lives of others. And I believe that we need to make sure that government is working for all of the people, not just some of the people. It's about building strong communities. And so as your state representative, I will make sure to serve this entire community. I will be a full-time, transparent, and available state representative who's going to be accessible to the people and make sure that you have a voice in all levels of government, city, state, and federal government. Not just adults, but I want to also just make sure youth voice is so important, young adult voice is so important, and student voice is so important, all who will have a seat at my table.
Great. Thank you so much, Rob. Dukens?
Yes. Again, that is a very good question. We are living in multicultural district. I believe Gretchen mentioned it earlier. After decades, we barely knew what was Ward 18, if Ward 18 was even exist. We fought together until we gained the access back and brought it back to the community. And we touched pretty much all the communities in Ward 18. We talk to people, we listen to their concerns, and we understand the needs that Ward 18 need to be public. And that way, we need more transparency and more accessibility. And I will, one of the things that I will do once I get elected on September 1st, I will make sure we hold town meetings and listen to people's concerns and make sure there's, just like Rob says, we have something in common, but make sure we have something, an office to the community. And one of the things that I want to do specifically is to bring the government to the community. And if we voted for any candidate, they should be accessible. They should not be MIA after the election is over. They should be more open. They should be willing to answer your questions and listen to your concerns. And that's what I would do. And I promise you that you would not looking for me. I will be the first person you see. I will be the last person you see before you go to bed, because I'll be around. Anytime there's an issue, you will be the first person you see. Because right now you see BLM, right? The reason why you see a lot of politicians right now is because they need your vote. It's because they understand that election is coming right around the corner. If they don't show up, they're not going to get your vote. And I promise you that if there was not election coming up, you would never see any of the candidates. And one of the things that I did when we had issues with the fare increase on the MBTA, I was not running. I never knew that I was going to run for public office, but I was there supporting and go against the fare increase. I was at Jackson Square. I was at Ashmont. I was there to make sure the fare is not going up because of the hardworking family, because of what's going on. We need a better and reliable transportation system. I was there for Stop and Shop when they have the strike back last year. I didn't know I was going to run, but I did it because I believe in people. I believe what the community is looking for. I believe what the community is trying to look for. So it should not be politicians should not be an opportunist. And I think enough is enough. We need actions. Enough of opportunists, candidate. We need actions. We need people that will be there for you, for true, for real, and that will understand the problem, the needs. Because when I looked at you, I see myself in you. I see the pain you're going through. I see the problem you're dealing with. But no other candidate in this platform right now, as we speak, understand the struggle that you're going through more than I do, because I go through it. I've been there, and we're dealing with the same issue. And I think it's time to understand that politics should not be about a specific group. It should be for the people, and government should be for the people. We vote for you. We should be reliable and respond to the community questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dukens. So next we have a question on affordable housing from Jean. Our younger generation is being pushed out, and our senior population is facing difficulty staying in their homes. What would be your main plans to intervene or slow down the rampant real estate hikes for both rentals and home ownership in our Roslindale and Hyde Park neighborhoods? Rob, we can go to you first, and please remember the 2-minute time limit. Thank you.
Yeah, so first, I think, housing and home ownership is one of the top priorities. I've mentioned it consistently in this race, that if you ask me my top 2 or 3 priorities, and when we talk about housing, it's a bigger issue. It's not just affordable housing, although that's so important. It's home ownership and providing more home ownership opportunities for our families. It's about making sure our tenants are protected who are being forced out of our city and priced out of our city. So there's bills at the State House that I would support right now, and that I hope get passed in this extended session in the legislature. First is the right to counsel bill, which provides counsel and attorneys in court proceedings for those being evicted to level the playing field. The right to purchase, many buildings that are being gobbled up by developers or are being foreclosed on. Tenants often will have the right to, often will be able to purchase those buildings, but don't get the opportunity to. We need to give tenants the right around linkage and IDP, the real vehicles that provide funding to the city of Boston to build affordable housing in our city. That's a bill that would give us local control back in the city of Boston to manage our own affairs, if you will, to increase the fees, to bake it into the zoning code, to do the things we need to do to make the necessary changes to keep up with the high cost of housing in our city. Absolutely would support that as well. I think we need to make sure that the state meets its community preservation match for cities and towns. That's a way to provide more funding for homeowners, for housing in our city on all levels. That's a critically important piece to this. I think we need to support organizations like the Boston Home Center. The Boston Home Center is the city that you've heard me talk about it, but it's the exact question, is the city's agency that help people obtain, retain, and maintain their homes. We need to increase funding on the state level to organizations like the Home Center that provide first-time home buyer down payment and closing cost assistance, foreclosure prevention, and senior home repair to keep seniors in their home.
Great. We can go to Dukens next, please.
Thank you. Here's one of the things that a lot of politicians always do. They talk about housing, but the keyword is affordable housing. But how are we going to do this? As an immigrant, we came in this country to live the American dream. My question is, are we living the American dream right now in our district while we live in a high cost of living? It's very expensive. The cost of living in Massachusetts and throughout the Commonwealth is extremely expensive. The bill that we're gonna pass is not only gonna help our district, it's gonna help the Commonwealth as well. We're gonna make sure anything that's already in there, we're gonna examine it, we're gonna read it and make sure we understand it. It's gonna be for the betterment of our community, for the betterment of our 14th Suffolk District resident. We will support the system that's already in place, which is there's some programs out there rent to own. We're gonna support. We need to protect the tenants. As a homeowner, before I owned my own property, I was a tenant as first, and like I said, I am a victim. I'm a first-hand victim in the system. So you need someone that understands your needs. You need someone that's actually been through the same issue, that's all going through the same issue you're going through, in order for you to be represented the right way. Because having someone to represent you, never been through that position, never been there, never been through the struggle you're going through, they're not going to understand it. They're going to pretend they understand the issue you're going through as a tenant. They're going to pretend they understand the issue you're going through as a homeowner. But in reality, they don't really understand it. You need to be in the kitchen for you to know the weird ingredient in your food. So that's the reason why I put myself out there. That's the main reason why I am running this race, because I want to be part of the kitchen to make sure we know the exact ingredient we have in our food. And I promise you, you're going to be part of this table. I promise you, you're going to be part of this decision making. I'm not going to leave you behind and be like a one-man show and make any false promise, but we're going to be working together, understand the community, what the community really needs, because we're going to support the community in all integrity. Thank you.
Thank you, Dukens. Gretchen?
Thank you. I'm so happy for this question because this is one of the reasons I'm running for office. It's absolutely critical that we, first of all, maintain the current moratorium on evictions until, and then for foreclosures, excuse me, until the COVID crisis is behind us. We have no idea how long it's going to take to recover from the crisis that we're in right now. We have no idea how long it's going to take for our economy to recover. So we need to right now make sure that no one loses their home, that no one is foreclosed on, and that we protect the small landlords in our district who live in a double and they live in one half of it and rent out the other half. We need to protect our small landlords. We need to to maintain the moratorium on evictions and foreclosures until we have recovered from the pandemic and the economy has begun to grow again. And when that happens, how do we, hopefully, we will have started the work on transforming our economy into one that is sustainable and green, and that everyone earns a living wage. So part of our housing crisis is simply that wages have not kept up with housing costs. So that's part of the equation. If the minimum wage had kept up with production and inflation, it would be about $40,000 a year right now, which is a nice, would be a good baseline salary for trying to live in Boston here. The next thing we need to do is reform and replace the Zoning Board of Appeals and the BRA, the Boston Development and Planning Agency, because these are not community-based planning agencies. These are the agencies that have okayed building luxury condominiums and luxury homes again and again and again in our neighborhoods. That's part of the thing that drives up the cost of housing. So reforming those agencies that they are community-based, making sure that we have a luxury tax that's reinvested back into making housing affordable, and making sure that we also, once we're out of COVID, have some sort of rent control so that folks like you have a way to continue to live in the city and afford to work here, go to school here, and start your families here.
Thank you. Now, next we have a question on business from Sean. How should our state help business owners reopen their businesses and get unemployed residents get back to work? Dukens, we can start with you this time.
Thank you. As your next state representative, I pledge to work with legislators to stimulate small business growth. I honestly want to end the closure gap in the small business sector. And I want everyone to know that every small business, they're very important in our community. They're the backbone of every community city. Because of lack of support from the consumer and elected official, about 80% of new businesses failed within the first year. As we speak right now, a quarter of businesses will be closing their door post-COVID-19. I have a unique view that is fair and equitable for every small business owners. I personally promote small business development. I promise to work with other state representatives and senators to secure smart grant to help small businesses grow. Along with other colleagues in the Senate or House, I will fight hard to allocate loans with at least 0% interest. This is what I would do. I would, right now, post-COVID-19, when we go to certain stores, we buy certain things, they give us free interest in a loan or a credit card or something. This is what we need. We need loans to help the businesses. If you give them loans, you cannot force them to reopen back with 100% of the employees. It's a loan, and you give them interest. Even if it's 0.1, it's unfair to the business owners. What I would propose, and I would fight for, I would advocate for, I would make sure we allocate loans with 0% interest for up to 24 months for the small businesses to make sure that they keep their doors open. And I would encourage tax break to assist small business post-COVID-19. I certainly believe that small business are the backbone again for every city's economy. One of the slogans that I've been having out there is keeping it local, meaning eat local, shop local, consume local. The only way we can do that is by working together, by provide to the small businesses, by giving them a chance, a fair shot in our community. And I promise you, after September 1st, once I get elected, I get in the House, I would advocate for them. I would make sure they keep the door open. I'll make sure they hire as much as they can back of employees post-COVID-19. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dukens. Gretchen, please.
Yes, thank you. I think I'm the only small business owner here. I have my own law practice and employees for almost 14 years. And I'm also a past president of Main Streets organization. So I know how difficult it is to be a small business owner. I know how difficult it is right now. Dukens gave us all of the statistics about what's happening with our small businesses. And we know how our unemployment rate continues to grow week by week. So what is our responsibility as a state representatives? What's our responsibility on Beacon Hill to help guide us and bring us out of this crisis? It's going to take more than simply the resources that we have as a state. So I am the only candidate here who has signed the Green New Deal pledge. And this is the way that I see us going forward. Partnering with Congress, our representatives in Congress, and with our federal government, because they have the resources to assist us in coming out of this pandemic stronger than we went in, and making sure that we are transforming our economy as we make investments in responding to the COVID crisis. This is the moment when we invest in transforming our economy into a green and sustainable one. This is the moment when we invest in new jobs and new training. I will never forget in the State House having a great conversation with the IBEW, the Electrical Workers Union, saying we are training electricians to install and maintain solar panels. So those are the kinds of jobs of the future that we need to be training people for right now and investing in making that happen. So that's our job in the State House, is to gather those resources and work with our congressional delegation to invest in a Green New Deal. I've signed the pledge, I'm all in. I've also been endorsed today by 350 Massachusetts, which is working on a roadmap to the Massachusetts Green New Deal. And I look forward to partnering with them to address specifically the issues that you have discussed here today, bringing my experience as a small business owner and a Main Streets president to the table as well.
Thank you so much. Rob.
Thank you for the question. So first off, we need to make sure that we're looking at how we help businesses recover and how we help businesses open through the lens of equity. We know that the COVID crisis has disproportionately impacted communities of color and our most marginalized communities. And we know that we need to make sure that the decisions that are made on the state, city, and federal level use that lens of equity to make sure that we're addressing the even more greater exposed inequities that COVID has raised. We need to make sure that we're basing decisions on our reopening on science and that we're not putting our business owners in jeopardy. We're going to talk to our officials at the Boston Public Health Commission and the Chief of Health and Human Services and our colleagues at the CDC to make sure we understand and have a responsible roadmap and responsible plan for opening our businesses in a way that doesn't jeopardize public safety for them, for their workers, or for their patrons. We have to look at it through the lens of COVID. We have to look at it through the lens of equity, and we have to look at it through the lens of safety and data and science. I will say, though, that as a state representative, my job is in the State House, and I will not give the state a free pass on making sure that they're investing in our local small business districts. While we have to make sure that we understand the economic realities that COVID has created on the state level, and yes, I too will support and advocate and use my bully pulpit to have Congress increase federal funding to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and then make sure as a state representative that that federal funding gets allocated fairly. I won't give the state a free pass. We need to hold the state, the legislature, our governor, and all those who work in the State House accountable for making sure that valuable resources that they are providing to help the COVID crisis comes back to the city of Boston, comes back to the 14th Suffolk District, and is delivered equitably through the lens of equity, and to make sure that all of our constituents get what they deserve. We need to be the strongest voice possible in the State House to hold our state colleagues and our state leaders accountable to make sure that this district is represented in the State House and that the city of Boston is represented in the State House. And by the way, advocate federally as well.
Great, thank you so much. Next, we have another climate change question from James. How do you personally understand the Green New Deal? How can this broad vision be actualized in the Massachusetts legislature? What would you prioritize? We can go to Gretchen first on this one.
Thank you, James. How I personally understand the Green New Deal is that it is a comprehensive vision for transforming our economy to one that is green and sustainable, one that is racially and economically just, and one where everyone has a fair shot. And it's not going to be easy. There are so many parts of this, the Green New Deal, that we will need to address at the State House in partnership with our colleagues in the City Council and in Congress as well. But what the Green New Deal does, and the Massachusetts roadmap for a Green New Deal that 350 Mass is talking about, is that it acknowledges that all of the issues that we're talking about tonight are connected. So the climate crisis, environmental justice, racial justice, economic justice. Democracy itself is all connected and is all imperiled in this moment. So to me, the Green New Deal is an ideal, a goalpost, but also a guiding principle about how we are going to address the multiple connected crises that we have right now in our community, in our Commonwealth, in our country, around the world. But it also sets very, very strong goalposts and measures for how we are going to actually fix these problems. So as we address climate change, we are also going to be addressing racial inequity. As we address racial inequity, we will also be addressing everything from clean transportation to housing that's affordable and safe, to things like the urban tree canopy that we've talked about here. We're going to be talking about democracy and how all of you stay involved. I'm also the only candidate in this race who has taken the Act on Massachusetts Transparency and Accountability Pledge. So we make democracy stronger while we make our economy stronger and fair, while we work to bring everyone to the table in an equitable and just way, and transform our society in this moment, our community in this moment, to one that is fairer and more just, sustainable, and green.
Thank you, Gretchen. Rob, we can go to you now, please. You're muted.
Again, you would think after being on Zoom calls all day, I would figure this out. I think it's about advancing the cause of justice and equity in our environmental policy. And it is about environmental justice, but it's more than that. It's also about making sure that each of you on this phone, on this call tonight, and all of those that are listening are prepared for new jobs and a new economy. It's about making sure that we have a roadmap and a blueprint for the kind of racial justice and environmental justice that we need to move our city and our country forward. It's about transitioning to clean energy and making sure that we have policies in place to transition to clean energy. It's about making sure that we are carbon neutral. Well, making sure that locally we're holding our city and our city leaders and our state leaders accountable for the kind of things that bring about the real answers to climate change. And it's also about holding people accountable to making sure that we have high wage jobs, that we have good jobs in a new economy, that we have job training and workforce development, and making sure that there's opportunity for everybody in this new economy. It's also local. It's making sure that we're working with the city of Boston on many of the things that we've talked about: coastal flooding, inland flooding, making sure that we're putting energy and climate change and racial justice and environmental justice in our housing policy. And as we build new houses, that they're energy efficient, and that we're providing more affordable housing in our city and along the Fairmount line and around train stations. It's about doing the kind of things that hold people accountable. The city of Boston is looking towards moving to a carbon emission standard. A carbon emission standard would hold buildings accountable for their carbon output and set goals and mandates on how they have to reduce that. It's about making sure that we are thoughtfully thinking about how we address the impacts of climate change and how we make sure your voice and the voice of everyone who's on this call has a seat at the table of those discussions.
Thank you, Rob. Dukens, please.
Great question. I will support it strongly. That's one. Second, it is part of the environment, and which is one of my focus points when it comes to this question. I am so passionate about it, especially for the resident in Wheatville. And I don't think it's fair for the resident in Wheatville to go through what they're going through right now. A lot of candidates may not know what they're going through, but they're going through a lot. First thing that needs to happen is the removal of everything that transforms Wheatville into a dump area for booking buses and trains. I also think people need to understand that their existence is in danger if they don't change their habit with regard of the nature, the way things is working. MBTA has to work in the keyless system, because right now, as we speak, we have every night between 12 midnight and going all to 2 o'clock in the morning, there's a train going the overpass on Wheatville, spreading smoke, dark smoke. And I don't think it's fair for the resident in Wheatville to consume that. It's not fair for the environment. It's not fair for the resident. And I think something needs to be done, and that needs to be done immediately. And that's one thing. That's my focus point. I will work on it once I get in the house, because I don't think they deserve that. And we will work on that. And I think it will create the GND will create jobs. We'll support it, strongly support it. And I think we need that in our society, in our district. And like I said again, I will work with other colleagues in the House to make sure we implement what's already in place, and make sure that we work with MBT and Keolis to protect the environment of our 14th Suffolk District resident. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Next, we have a question on green space. And this is a question from Janet. How do you reconcile the need for open green space with our housing needs? And we can go to Rob on that answer, please.
Yeah, I really appreciate that question. I'm the only candidate in this race that's proposed two things that I think are critically important for the future of going forward in a thoughtful and responsible way, driven by the community, that has community voice. I've called for two planning studies. The first one we need is a master planning study from the Boston Planning and Development Agency. We're one of the only neighborhoods that doesn't have it, and it's because we never needed it. But as I said earlier, developers have now found out what we know. This is the greatest community in the city of Boston. So we need a thoughtful planning process that's driven by the community, that is written by the community, that will provide a blueprint going forward of what future development in our neighborhood should look like. Right now, it's a hodgepodge of parcels here, parcels there, land there, private landowners looking to cash in on the market. That's not the way to do business. We need to make sure that any development coming to this community is thoughtfully planned. It's driven by what's in the best interest of the community, and it's driven by the voices in this community. I've also called for an open space master plan. The incredible amount of open space DCR land that we have here needs to be thoughtfully planned as well. And they should run simultaneously. We should be planning the development of our future development and blueprint for our community at the same time that we're planning the open space preservation and open space use of our community. I'll file a bill in the legislature to require DCR to conduct that master planning process that will have community voice and community members, and all of you on this call will have a seat at the table. Those processes will run simultaneously so that we can have a thoughtful process about protecting our open space. It's important to remember that as we're planning, we need to not only plan for density, we need to plan for the value of public open space and how that interacts with the density. And so that's why it's critically important. Without a blueprint, without a plan, without something that has been driven by the community, we will continue to struggle every single day with how we hold DCR accountable for our public open space and how we hold developers accountable about building what's responsible for our neighborhood.
Great. Thank you, Rob, for that. Dukens, can you go next, please?
Okay. Public open space has a great value in our community, and we definitely need to, just like Rob said, we need to keep DCR accountable for it, hold them accountable for it, and make sure they do a better job. We'll work with other colleagues in the legislation and to fight for what's right for our community. We need a better environment. We need a better system. Like, you cannot be having open spaces and vacant like that without doing anything for the betterment of our community, for the safety of our community. We need to work with DCR and other legislators to make sure we have something in plan to create a strategy plan to fight this and make it better for our community, because the community doesn't deserve that. They deserve something better. They deserve open space that is approachable, that is accessible, and make it better for the community. And I will work together with all other legislators again to make sure we create some sort of strategy plan, and to make it one of our focus points on the table, to make sure we discuss it together and bring the solution that the community needs. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Dukens. Gretchen.
Yes, this goes back to something I mentioned before. The current planning and development process in the city of Boston is very much one development at a time, one proposal at a time. Neighborhoods have to respond one at a time to these different proposals. We need a new planning and development agency. We need to disband the BDPA because it's not serving our community's needs. And we need community-based planning for how we want our city to grow. And it's part of it is making sure that the community of the 14th Suffolk District is involved in the planning, but we are also part of a bigger city. So if we look across the city-wide, there are so many opportunities to include housing along public transportation lines, in places where land is underutilized, where it has been abandoned. We need to be looking at developing those areas for housing while we protect green space. So there are a lot of opportunities within the city itself, and this is why a true planning agency that takes a citywide look and works with each neighborhood in developing a planning process and, as Rob said, a master plan for how we want to grow as a city is necessary. We don't have any agency that's doing that right now, and that means that we lose some green space here. We put a single family home over there where maybe a 2-family would have made more sense. So we need to look at density, we need to look at development around public transportation, and we need citywide planning that looks at where there are opportunities to build additional housing while also protecting green space, because we know that that's critical to addressing climate change and slowing it down as well.
Great, thank you so much. The next question is on a topic that we have already discussed. It's on police reform. It's a question from Mary. And I know we sort of touched on the idea of qualified immunity, but Mary's question is specifically about the current House Bill 4794. And for all of you who don't know, this bill would ban chokeholds, create an oversight board certification system for police officers, curb the use of no-knock warrants, and put some limits on qualified immunity. Proponents, like the Massachusetts Coalition of Police, say the bill is a good compromise, while critics, including the Massachusetts ACLU, say it does not go far enough. So this question is very specific about the bill. What is your position on that House bill that is, again, being debated right now? And would you have voted for it? And we can go to Dukens first.
Yes, I would vote for it. And like I said, as a person of color in this race right now, I felt the pain of what we're going through because I am a victim of it. No other candidates right now, as we speak in this platform, understand what it's like to be a Black person in America right now. We suffering too. We going through a lot. So other politicians might make it seems like they understand it, but in reality, they're not living it. So you must be part of it. You gotta live it for you to understand it. So therefore, I have to support it, and I will support it strongly because we demand actions, and that's not what we aim for. That's not what we voted for. We support more training and talk to the police officers. Make sure they understand the system. That's what I said earlier. We cannot hire police officers that doesn't understand the community. You must hire a police officer that understands inside and outside of the community. That's why I would support community policing and make sure they understand. I would not hire someone that's coming from Texas or Providence or New York to come in Boston because they have some qualification because they've been in service. I understand that. I have to give them the priority. But when it comes to them, so it has to be hiring a police officer that lives in the community together because they understand the community better. They understand what's going on. So therefore, I will support the bill. I will support it all the way. Thank you.
Thank you. We can go to Gretchen, please.
Yes, I spent hours watching the debate on this bill in the House and listened to heart-wrenching stories from our community, from across the Commonwealth, from representatives that I deeply respect who have had incredible experiences that are relevant to this bill. This is one of those issues where politics is the art of the possible, where you don't want the perfect to be the enemy of the good. But I would have voted no on this bill because it does not go far enough. We should absolutely ban no-knock warrants in our state. There's no need to endanger people in their homes. We should ban chokeholds. We should ban the use of tear gas on civilians, just like the United Nations does and calls it a war crime when tear gas is used on civilians. We are at a moment right now where a lot of reality that has been invisible to too many people has been made visible. We need to use this moment to make the changes and the deep, deep reforms that are necessary to bring racial justice and true justice to our society. I would have voted for this on this bill because we need to continue this debate. We need to hold ourselves to a higher standard, and we need to make the tough decisions. It's not going to endanger anyone in our state to have this very, very tough reform bill. Our law in Massachusetts, and in fact, that's our responsibility in this moment to respond to everything that has been made visible in the past through the Black Lives Matter movement since Ferguson, which is when finally this became part of our national debate. It must be part of our decision-making as state representatives as well. And I would continue to fight for deeper reforms. I think the ACLU got it right. And they are the best protectors of civil rights and liberties that we have in the country. And they know that we can do better.
Thank you, Gretchen. Rob.
Thanks for the question. Yeah, I think earlier I articulated my strong concerns against eliminating qualified immunity. I think it's a broader issue. I want to just reiterate that a lot of folks, I think, don't understand, and I think we need to take the opportunity to thoroughly vet that. And the legislature, in their wisdom, said that we need to take that into a commission to study it, and we need to report back quickly by March of next year so the legislature can truly address the issue of qualified immunity. I want to reiterate, we don't know the impacts on public employees, from our firefighters and EMTs to our nurses and teachers to our great employees that work in City Hall and the State House, what the impact on them is as well, including the impact on municipalities for having to cover the cost for indemnifying folks in this situation. Cities and towns aren't ready yet to grapple with that, and if they change it, what are the rules around it? And also there's a real impact on state and federal courts. What is the impact on those? So there's huge issues there. I have other concerns as well. Again, I said it earlier, I was very concerned about the Senate bill and the way that process went with no public testimony. A bill passed at 4 o'clock in the morning where no one got to weigh in. As I make calls, I hear from people that want more transparency, not less. They want more of a voice and a seat at the table, not less. I think that if this bill had more time and there was a more thoughtful process, more people could get a seat at the table. I also think we would find common ground. I support completely the reforms that are needed that are in both of these bills. As I said earlier, the banning of chokeholds, a commission to certify and decertify police, duty to intervene, which is so critical, and many other reforms in this bill, which has so much common ground between state representatives and state senators. And I think that, we can get there. I think we can get there in a transparent and fair way where every voice is heard, where everyone has a seat at the table. And as a result of those concerns, I would have voted against it with hope that we can continue to have this debate. We can find common ground. We can build bridges and get there, that a bill that unanimously is supported by this legislature, not on the close votes that happened when these bills were passed.
Okay, so thank you for that. We have arrived at the last question, and this is a question from Bernie. Leaving aside the impact of COVID-19, what do you see as the most important issues facing the district? And we can go to Gretchen first.
It's sort of hard to set aside the impact of COVID right now. But I think the most important issue facing our community is how do we grow and continue to be the welcoming, diverse, inclusive community that we are when there are so many pressures for development coming from every direction. So that was one of the reasons that I ran 2 years ago. That was one of the reasons I knocked on 30 doors and talked to so many people. This is a community that folks who have grown up here, folks whose grandparents grew up here, love as much as the folks who moved in last year and have fallen in love with this, all the same wonderful things that we love, that lived here longer, love. The neighborliness, the welcomingness, the diversity and the inclusion that we see in every part of our neighborhoods. So I would say that if we weren't facing COVID right now, the issues I would be fighting for most directly is how to continue to grow as a community and be affordable for working families and young people. And also, how do we fix the inequitable funding in our public schools? That is one of the biggest issues that every city, every neighborhood in the city of Boston faces. It took over 25 years to fix the foundation funding formula in the state budget. We had finally last year passed over $1 billion to begin to make up for the inequities in public school funding, especially in cities like ours. That's the issue that I'm also most passionate about. I attended public schools my whole life. I went to great public schools. I went to underfunded public schools. I sat in my third grade classroom in my winter coat because of broken windows. The fact that that still continues in Massachusetts today, in the richest state, one of the richest states in the richest country in the world, is absolutely immoral and wrong. And I will fight for the funding that we need from the state to address those inequities and make sure every school that every child attends is the best possible school.
Thank you, Gretchen. Rob?
Yeah, so again, it's a really tough question because there's so many important issues out there that impact this community, both on the macro level and the micro level. So I'll do it in two tiers. I think on the macro level, we talked a little bit about housing and home ownership. And I want to talk about, I think housing is such a critical issue. Not just when people say housing, we talk about it in sort of general terms, but housing has so many layers of it that are so important. It's how do we build more affordable housing and rental housing in our community? How do we do it thoughtfully with a planning process that lets the community guide where we think that density should be? How do we continue to invest along the Fairmount line and take advantage of making sure all of the folks who live along the Fairmount line between here and South Station have access to safe, affordable housing near the transportation system so that they can get to work and to school and to visit family and to their jobs in a responsible manner? It's really looking out for our tenants. You know, we talked a little bit earlier about the bills at the State House. I couldn't agree more about supporting the moratorium on evictions. I actually support a specific bill that Representative Honan and Representative Conley have filed to extend the moratorium on evictions from a year from the end of the declaration of the emergency, and to also provide relief to small landlords of 15 units or under so that they can also survive this COVID crisis. We need to make sure that we're going to have a wave of foreclosures and evictions. We need to make sure that we're investing in the foreclosure crisis and that we're making sure that we're renegotiating loans for families to help keep families in their homes. And again, seniors, we never talk enough about seniors. I want to make sure that seniors have the resources that they deserve, they so richly deserve. We need to make sure that they can stay in their homes. Seniors are cash poor but house rich. We want them in their homes. And we need to make sure we can do everything we can to support that. On the local level, on the thousands of calls I've made, people want to make sure we're holding DCR accountable for investing in our community. We want to make sure we're holding the city accountable for investing resources in our community. And we want to make sure that everybody has a voice at the table on the city and state level to make sure that this community and the 14th Suffolk gets what we need and deserve.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Dukens, please.
Thank you. That's a very good question. This question is a question even we take the 2 hours is not going to be enough for us to talk about, but I would say healthcare is, I will definitely take healthcare as one of our issues. I will make sure healthcare is not a privilege. It is a right for every human being. We will talk also for transportation. I will make sure transportations are reliable and accessible post-COVID-19. And we'll want to make sure one of the things that we've been fighting for is make sure seniors have access to transportation free of charge, 60 plus. We want to make sure we support youth between 18 and 24. They have, if you're in college between 18 to 24, you should have free access to transportation as well. That's one of the things that we're supporting. And we also, we want to see affordable housing. We want to work and implement that and then create some sort of strategy plan to create more affordable housing, because we live in a district that where cost of living is very expensive. So we want to make sure we support that and make sure they have enough, the hardworking family. You want to support that. Because the thing is, if you're making minimum wage, you cannot even rent a 2-bedroom house because it's over $1,800. So therefore, we got to work together and make sure things getting done the right way and then bring the community together and then fix the community. We can do it together. So that's, and I prove it. And when I was supporting Ward 18, and now we were going to prove it again on September 1st for state representative. Thank you.
Great. So that concludes the questions. I am now going to go to each of you for a 1-minute closing statement. And yes, I am keeping time. We're running late. So I ask you to please keep it to 1 minute, and I'm going to go alphabetical again. Rob, you can go ahead.
I promise I'll stay a minute on this one. I know I violated it all night. First of all, I'm just so excited that I had this opportunity. I want to thank all of you on this call for hosting this event tonight, for our moderators, for everyone who put so much time into this. You are the future of the city, this state, and this country. I see mayors, I see city councilors, I see a governor and potentially a president on this line. And so I want to ask you all to stay involved, be involved civically, stay engaged, and hold our feet to the fire as elected officials and community leaders. I'm so excited to be a candidate in this race. I'm running for a very simple reason. I'm running because I believe that government and public service is about helping people. It's about making a difference on the lives of others. I think that's missing today in government, particularly on the state level and the federal level. I believe that government is about creating opportunities for all people. And I want government to work for all of the people, not just some of the people. I bring the unique experience and expertise who could hit the ground running on the very first day to be your voice at the State House and to do this job. I hope you'll vote for me. Thank you.
Awesome. Rob, you did it. 1 minute. All right. Dukens.
Am I good?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. First and foremost, I truly appreciate the opportunity to serve and work with the public. I understand the need of the community, and that's one of the reasons why I jumped in this race to run for state representative. And I believe that we've been voting for a lot of politicians that were not speaking for everyone. I believe the community is tired the way they are being treated unfairly. We are also tired with the same old faces and continue running the office, and well, enough is enough. Our district deserves new vision with bold ideas, and that can help bring the relief to families impacted by COVID-19. I am fully prepared to take on challenges and ready to work alongside communication at large, community at large. I certainly believe that our district deserves someone like me to fight tirelessly for our most progressive values, such as making sure there's a level of opportunity for everyone and for the hardworking families. On that being said, I hope I can count on your support on September 1st. I count on your support. We are sick and tired of politicians that are taking advantage of our community. As a long-time community activist and a Ward 18 vice chair, we notice nothing is being done to protect our seniors and children and pre-medical condition. So as our state representative, I will stand up against prejudice. I will fight for you. I will advocate for you. I will get the job done. So I count on your support on September 1st. Please support me and vote for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Dukens. Gretchen?
Thank you, Marcela. Thank you, Sabra. Thank you especially to the Green Team for all of your questions tonight and for putting this forum together. Thank you to everyone who signed in. We're spending so much time on Zoom. Adding another evening in front of your computer online is a tremendous investment in our democracy, and I want to just take a moment to appreciate that. In my first run for public office 2 years ago, we knocked on over 30,000 doors. I spoke with thousands of my neighbors, far too many of whom said that no one had ever knocked on their door before or asked them what they need from their state government. I promised I would be back, I would not forget them, and we're keeping that promise in this campaign. This is not a time for ordinary leadership. My experience as legal counsel in the Massachusetts State Senate, my experience as a lifelong civil rights attorney has made me the kind of courageous leader that we need in this moment. This is a moment for unprecedented leadership and courage to face the unprecedented challenges that we have. I'm asking you to join me in this race because it actually isn't really about me, it's about each one of you. So I'm asking for your vote and I'm asking for your help to get us to September 1st and elect the leadership this district and each one of you deserves. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. That concludes our forum tonight. Thank you first and foremost to the Green Team. You are an amazing group of youth. I remain in awe of your commitment and the depth of your questions. I'm going to totally steal them. Thank you to the Fairmont Indigo CDC Collaborative, the Southwest Boston CDC. And if you have questions about these organizations and their initiatives, how to get involved, please contact Saba or Pat. There's their information. contact them to get involved. And lastly, and last but not least, please do not forget to vote on September 1st. That is the most important thing tonight. Thank you so much. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.